evening, everyone. This is Mr. Brannigan. I'm waiting for a few more people because I want to be respectful, but at the same time, see if we get a few more people to jump in before we get started. And yep, there's another person. We're getting there. I'm going to be respectful of your time tonight, but we do want to have some opportunities to share some information with you at the same time. If it works, be able to get you a few questions in the chat. We find ourselves, I'll speak specifically for myself, 2 years ago at this time, I was a Zoom expert, knew everything about it. Now that we're not using it as frequently, I think it's only my second attempt this school year at a Zoom, and my first one was, as the people here can testify to, not successful when we tried to close the school for an imminent storm. But so hopefully everything's working, and we can get some questions in the chat as we move forward, and we'll answer accordingly. So just to go ahead and get started, I've got some administrators on here I want to introduce. I've got Mr. Vermillion, the Social Studies Department Chair. I've got Miss Shop, the Science Department Chair, who is pulling double duty tonight for us. She wanted to be part of the Zoom, and she's also at in her car at Roncalli supporting our boys basketball team as they start Marion County tournament tonight. We've got Mr. Bergholt, who is the Math Department Chair, who always has the coolest backgrounds. And then we have Mr. Lineweaver from the English Department. So this is a representation of North Central's admin team. There's many other department chairs out there. We sometimes refer to these department chairs as the Big Four. They're the largest departments and the largest core departments that we have. So no disrespect to any of the other department chairs, but I want to make sure that the core department chairs were on this Zoom. So the purpose of this conversation or interaction is to do a little follow-up. Pre-break, I sent out an updated version of the departmental grading principles. As you're well aware, this year we tried to streamline some things at North Central. Some things went off without a hitch, and other things we've had to tweak and solicit information to make improvements. As an example, and those, if anybody is on here from the PTO, we've talked about this for years. Up until this year, North Central did not have a grading scale, a universal grading scale for students. I got here back in '95, and we didn't have one back then when I was a teacher. And so now we know what an A is, an A-, B+, et cetera, in our traditional classes. The only time you see an exception, honestly, is when it's an ACP course or a dual credit course offered through IU. They get to dictate to us as we're teaching a college course at the high school level. But it's the 80-20 that got the most attention early on. And the attention was because a lot of things, the extra credit, as an example, that we used to allow teachers to give, some gave some gave none. But we stopped that practice. We streamlined makeup work. Not a lot of pushback on the streamlining of makeup work. One of the holdovers from COVID was that we put a floor on the lowest grade that a student could earn. And that floor being a 50% as opposed to 0 or 30 or whatever. But the purpose of that was we want to keep kids close enough. I use the example of a student who rides the bus to school. If the bus is right in front of your porch, you'll sprint hard because you can still make it. You're going to put forth effort. If the bus is 2 blocks away, you're not going to put a lot of effort into it. Ultimately, when we look at an F is an F is an F, regardless of percentage. It's still an F. And if we give you 50% or keep the floor there, we're keeping you close enough that we don't want you to give up. We want you to still put forth effort. And that's still a point of contention. It is. But ultimately, when report cards come on a Friday, if a student has an F, regardless of percentage, the F will be reflective on the report card. But again, it was the 80-20 that we heard the most conversation from the teachers, teacher associations, PTO. We had many great PTO conversations related to that. And so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, if all goes well, related to what we ended up with departments. And what we did, and again, I'm going to share the screen here. What we ended up with was departmental input. Instead of having one size fits all, we let teachers have input through their department meetings. Teachers had input, some direct contact with myself. These were conversations that took place in their PLCs, or professional learning communities. And so you're not going to see, or you didn't see if you've read it already, that everything was the same or universal. So just to run through this quickly with our departments, instead of 80-20 being universal, departments got to talk amongst themselves, and this is where we landed. Second semester, English department mastery, or that summative work, will be at 65%, practice at 35%. Math mastery at 75%, practice at 25%. Science mastery at 75%, practice at 25%. Social studies mastery at 60%, practice at 40%. PE stuck with the 80-20. Visual arts 70-30. Performing arts 80-20. ENL, that's English as a new language, mastery at 60%, practice at 40%. And world language mastery at 70%, practice at 30%. Again, this came out of departmental meetings, professional learning communities. Our PLCs meet once a week. Departments meet once a month, but we did provide opportunities for input. And just for a point of clarification, because a question came out early, what is mastery? Mastery could include tests, projects, performances, and any other assessment that the teachers believe demonstrate student learning. So we're not locked in to just saying it's tests and quizzes. It can be pretty much anything that a teacher wants it to be, which is past practice. We just never gave a name to it. So there's nothing new there. And then we gave a little clarification about retakes. Why was there clarification about retakes? Well, when you have 3,700 students and close to 200 teachers, there was some gray area that popped up related to retakes. And to some students' credits, they were trying to be really creative in how to make the system work for them. So all practice formative work relating to the summative mastery assessment must be submitted for the retake. What does that mean? Well, we had students who would only want to show up for the summative and simply say, I'm going to take the summative or the test or whatever it is. I'm not really prepared for it. I'll just take the retake. But they never did any of the homework. They never did anything to assist themselves in that process. They were working the system. So we wanted to clarify that for students. Students will receive credit for all practice formative work submitted late to earn the retake, but may receive up to a 10% late penalty. So again, we want kids to do the work, sometimes simply referred to as homework, or whatever that scaffolding is to lead to the summative effort. We want kids to do it. And our teachers are putting in work to make sure that they're trying to build up to that summative assessment. And so we don't want to discourage the students saying, hey, you didn't turn it in, so now you can't. There's going to be a penalty for being late, but we still want you to turn it in. All retakes and late work must be completed within 2 weeks of the student having received their graded assignment with feedback. Unfortunately, we found ourselves with, again, a noble idea, but we had students who were trying to wait 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks to make up work, to say, I'll just do it later, I'll do it later. And from the teacher side of that does pose some serious concerns and issues. Where's the reteaching opportunities at? And so we clarified for students and for teachers and for families what that's going to look like. Teachers may require a student conference to be eligible for a retake, but they must accommodate students who are not able to attend during student support hours. So big push with teachers is that they wanted to meet with some students regarding a retake. They wanted to talk about, walk them through areas that they need improvement in. So we wanted to give teachers that leeway to be able to triage with a student before the retake, to have a sit down. But we were also cognizant of the fact that not everybody can stay after school or their study hall doesn't fit perfectly. So we do have a built-in opportunity for AM opportunities too, but that's a teacher-student collaboration effort. Additional remediation may be required based on a collective decision made by the teachers teaching the course. To translate, the PLC, based upon whatever that summative assessment is, may decide that the remediation, they're going to come out with remediation opportunities in class, But they can't just say the remediation only takes place after school. They can't say it takes place at 7 a.m. and you have to show up, but that remediation opportunity will be there for our students. And students who choose not to take the initial assessment will not be eligible. We found ourselves, honestly, when we came up with this some time ago, I never even thought about this. Students would not take the first assessment and simply say, I'll take the retest, hoping or gambling that the retest might be a watered down version of the first test, or they can pick up enough information between that and the retest that they'll garner more time. So, and we do have examples, a school this big, we do have examples of students who would sit for the summative, the first test, tell the teacher as they were handing it to them, no, I won't take that right now, I'll take the retest, and just sit in the room while everyone else is taking the test. And unfortunately, that happened too frequently. So we had to put a stopgap in there for that. So, and again, you have access to this. This is what I sent on the 23rd. It's also what we have, I sent out last night. So you have access to all of that already, but I want to put that out there for you. And so I thought I saw something in the chat. Let me see if I can get to it. I do not have something in the chat. I apologize. I thought I saw that. A participant has enabled closing captions. Who can see this transcript recording on? I can. The recording. I'm recording it for myself in case I have a parent who wasn't able to be here. And if somebody asks me for a copy of it, I'll just send it to them. Because we've got 35 people here and I got a building of 3,700 families. So if anybody says, hey, we didn't see it, is there anything that we put out there? Then that's what we're going to do. Okay. So we're trying to work the system. But I apologize if it's not going well, but we're learning here. So with that said, just real quick from the DCs, and Ms. Shop, I'm gonna let you go first because I'm actually going to get you out of here the fastest, as you're down on the south side trying to support our kids. Is there anything that you want to add, or questions, or anything about the process, or what it is that how you guys landed where you did?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I started by sending a survey to my teachers about how things had been going, and just asked them if we weren't going to do an 80-20, what would it look like? And we landed anywhere from 70-30 to 80-20 was really best practices for our department. It really fit along with what we'd been doing for a long time. Even though we didn't define it as 80-20, we might have defined it as total points. When we looked at how we were assessing students, when we graded labs and quizzes and tests, that was about 75-ish% of a student's overall grade. So we kind of landed there as sort of an official, by giving more points or a higher weight to that practice. Hopefully it's incentivizing students to pay a little bit more attention to their homework. I'd love it if we could not give homework points at all, just because the point of homework is to learn and to be ready for an assessment. But we know some students aren't there yet. So by incentivizing that, we're hoping that more students will pay attention to those little things in between the major assessments so that they'll then perform better on those assessments. So that's kind of how we came up with it and where we landed. It's very similar to what we've done in the past. I will say this too, I ran grades and compared in my major PLCs, biology, CP, ICP, and earth and space science. My grades are actually up over last year using the 80-20 system. And I think this 75-25 will even push us a little bit higher.
Okay. Ms. Shop, I'm going to ask you, just because on my end, it got a little fuzzy there for a second. You said this past semester grades were higher?
Yes. I ran grades from last year, first 9 weeks, and the second quarter, like in November, and then did the same thing for this year. And my grades on average, both at the 9 weeks and at that second quarter, are higher than they were last year in those courses.
Okay. To piggyback off that just for a second, folks, I ran a report at the 9 weeks just to see where we were and how things were going. And I did see that obviously on you for the science department. I saw, and I was looking at the distribution of letter grades by the building, and compared it to last year. And all I saw honestly was 1 or 2%, one way or the other way, on increase in A's, decrease in B's or C's, whatever it is, at the 9 weeks. I introduced that only because we're going to do the same thing for the semester to see what progress we've made. This isn't just a sit and get, and this is what we're doing. We are evaluating ourselves to see where we're demonstrating growth or where the limitations are. At the 9 weeks, building wise, I think we saw a 4% decrease in the total number of A's at the 9 weeks. But we saw an increase building wide over all total A's. But there's some questions. The chat is on. I apologize. And thank you, Mona Z, for letting me know that the chat was closed. And we do have some questions, so I'm just going to throw it out there. How late in the semester can work be returned and resubmitted? Remember, and part of that narrative I read off, we said you have 2 weeks, and that goes all the way up to the end of semester. So once we hit final exams, that window closes. That window is going to be closed because teachers come May, whatever that last day is, kids can't come back in and make retest or submit things at that point. When we hit finals, that's when the window closes. And there's another question. Can you speak to what has been gained by the system? Is there evidence that it is increasing equity as intended? It seems like there are significant extra burdens on teachers and decreased autonomy for teachers and increased anxiety for students. Big question. I'm going to see if I can answer all of that. Is there evidence that there is increased equity as intended? Using that 9 weeks data, and on my screen, I can just look at it real quick, or actually I thought I could. Yes, we saw an increase in allocation of grades in the mid-range. We did not see a drastic increase in the total number of A's overall in our underrepresented groups. We did not see that. However, and I'm clicking to open it up real quick. When it comes down to an increase in the number of B's, I'll give you an example here. Using our Black students, what we did was compare the total number of B or B pluses, B's, etc., from 2021 at the 9 weeks to 2022 at the same time. And so minimal increase. B plus distribution amongst Black students in 21 was at 7%, and in 2022 it was at 8%. B's were at 10% in 21, 22 is at 11%. We see a 1% increase in the B minuses, 1% increase in the C pluses, no change at the 9 weeks, and C in 21 compared to 22. C minus, no change. D plus, increase of 1%. So again, a 1%, just using that one group, just looking at that information. And the same can be said for almost all of our groups in the mid-range. And again, this is old data, since it goes all the way back to the 9 weeks. We're going to do that at the end of this week. And I think I said it already, but why are we waiting till the end of the week? We had a lot of students who missed their finals, be it through family vacation or personal illness. We had students who missed. And so we want the cleanest data we could possibly use. We're going to compare semester 1 of 21 to semester 1 of 22. So we're going to do the same thing across the board. And again, excuse me, that doesn't take into consideration, the external factors that might include. One of the things that we've struggled with first semester was student attendance. Transportation was not our friend early on, as many of you can testify to, where we had students who were getting here first period toward the end of first period. Buses were showing up 30 minutes late to start the school year. Then we changed our schedule. We took away academic time to support the kids who were stuck on buses because there was lost instruction taking place. And so all of that factors into student performance ultimately, especially those who are dependent upon the school bus. And even those who had private transportation, we decreased the total number of minutes in classes. And so it's a straight ripple effect. We couldn't just change it for one group without the other group being impacted. I think we've landed in a place late in the semester that was much more palatable. And when it came down to providing for transportation made improvements, but we still have buses that were late. Today being the first day, we had more buses because changes were made who were here before the start of school, but we still had buses late today. I mean, my last bus today was close to 9 o'clock, and that's 30 minutes after school started. Again, it's the first day, it'll get better, but those things have an impact on our kids. And then when you referenced extra burdens on teachers, that's why we listen to the teachers in regards to, hey, can we make change? The teachers are the ones who brought to our attention administratively how people were gaming the system and how what could we do to ensure that students took the test or that kids were doing the homework. So you're 100% correct in that regards. And when you say decreased autonomy for teachers, that asterisk point where I talked about what is a summative assessment, teachers control it. Administration does not. It's not me. It's not the people on this Zoom with me. Teachers choose that. And some folks want to be extra careful, and they decided this is the only thing I'm doing. Those are choices. Again, we didn't force anything on anybody, but I'm going to go through this next one from Ms. Clark. Hello, Shelley Clark. I know you. At the parent, and I apologize, Mr. Lineweaver got kicked off for some reason. He's going to try to log back in. At the parent council meeting with Dr. Taylor, Mr. Doss, and other administrators, we had a lot of parents concerned about the impact of the first quarter drop in grades on juniors and seniors who are applying to class. There are increases in D's and F's. Can you speak to those concerns? I can, and I can't speak to their data. I can't speak to our data. At the 9 weeks, because again, I'm comparing 9 weeks to 9 weeks a year apart. And I will admit that I've got 3 subgroups where I saw an increase, a 1% increase in the total number of Fs. Looking here at the data, for example, and again, I've got on my screen, I've got Black students. In 21 of the Fs that were distributed amongst Black students, that was a 10%. And in 22, it jumped up 1%. So there was an increase. And the D minuses stayed flat. The Ds, there was a decrease in the total number of Ds, but a 1% increase in the D pluses. Amongst my white students, I have, and I'm going to start with Ds, static at 2%. D minus, it's at 1%. F went up from 2% to 3%. So there is an increase. Now, remember, we're not talking, we're looking at the total number of grades that subgroup earned. The greatest impact of all my subgroups, my multiracial kids, there was no change in the net percentage of Fs from 21 for 22. There was an increase of 2% in the D minuses, no change in the number of Ds allocated. D pluses was a 1% increase. For my Hispanic students, that's the one subgroup that we saw the greatest growth in the number of Fs. It went from 8% to 11% from 9 weeks to 9 weeks. D minus is exactly the same. D's exactly the same. D pluses, we saw a 1% decrease. So again, I apologize that I don't have their data in front of me, but what we have in the school shows me the greatest group or increase in an area was my Hispanic students. And that's at 3% at the 9 weeks. Everything else is 1% up or 1% down across the boards in Ds and Fs. So we have, and Ms. Shop gave her observations as well from her lens, we haven't seen a drastic increase in the number of Ds and Fs at the 9 weeks. I may come back at the end of the week when we actually run these final numbers, that may be a change, but at the 9 weeks, no, 1% one way or the other, 2%, and I gave you my biggest change was at 4% in one of my subgroups. Curious if grades were compared with pre-pandemic 60-40 years. Pre-pandemic, there was no 60-40 years, and I don't, because we had no guidance on teachers. It was up to the discretion of the teacher or the PLC 100% back then. And this is pre-pandemic. And so you could have been rocking an 80-20 back then in a class. I know I had several departments, performing arts. This is really not a change for them. Ms. Shop already shared that in her department, it was pretty similar. But for some groups, it was a change. It was a shift, I'll openly admit. But the answer to your question is no, we don't have anything pre-pandemic that we've compared yet. And that's a tough one. That's a tough one. When I look at the, and this is anecdotal, when I look at the distribution of grades pre-pandemic to when we first came back, when we were online, It was a rough go at it. I'll be honest with you. It was a rough go for our students, for our teachers, and we did see a drastic increase in the number of Fs when we came back in that virtual environment. Our kids struggled with it. And so we made as many modifications as we professionally could to try to salvage that. But to direct answer, anonymous attendee, no, I do not have that. Anonymous attendee, possibly same person, but we heard there was a 29% raise in Fs. I don't have any data to support a 29% increase in Fs at the high school. I can't even say if there's a single class, and I'm not saying it doesn't happen in a class. I'm just saying that I have no data to support a 29% increase in Fs across the building. And I can say what the building had at the 9 weeks. At the 9 weeks, we had an increase of 2% of the total number of Fs allocated. In 2021, we allocated, of all the grades given, 6% were Fs. In 2022, at the 9 weeks, 8% were Fs. So, and D minuses stayed at 3%, D stayed at 4%, D pluses stayed at, D pluses went up 1%. But this is an area, total school, no subgroups, total school, we did see a decrease of about 3% in the total number of A's allocated at the 9 weeks, total building. B stayed A minuses stayed pretty close, 9.9% in 2022 versus 10% in 2021. And where we made our growth was in the number of B's, or percentage of B's allocated, and an increase in the total number of C pluses, but most everything else stayed stagnant when we look at it that way. I'm taking a look again. Percentages matter. Just saying an increase of 400 Fs sounds crazy, but in context, it sounds different. Well, I'm going percentages, but I can give you a context. Well, that's not fair because we had more grades allocated this year than we did in 2021. So we were comparing, as an example, A's. We had 6,334 A's out of a possible 21,000 versus this year where it's out of a 22,000. So potential grades. Shelly Clark, you're back. Up there, Shelly Clark. Can we talk about mental health supports? Okay. Soft skills support. Student anxiety is high. Soft skills are suffering due to pandemic. Do we think all kids who should retake will actually speak up? Are teachers going to encourage students to retake tests? That is a great question and great observation. And to that, do we think all kids who should retake will actually speak up? The answer is no. No, they will not. Let me rephrase that. First 9 weeks, they did not demonstrate that. And it's through the process of the grade level support teams as they're reaching out to parents with underachieving students or students who have demonstrated crises about some of the supports we have and opportunities before school, after school, during school. It's the responsibility of teachers to not just mention it at the beginning of the school year, but to also talk about after every summative assessment and make sure students are aware when their offerings are, when the opportunity presents itself. And again, teachers are not educators. I shouldn't just say teachers, but educators are not restricted to only offering it in this short window or that short window. Educators have the opportunity, and Mr. Lineweaver, I'm going to pick on him. And I know this as a parent. Mr. Lineweaver teaches a sophomore English class, and I know this as a parent. He wasn't satisfied with the performance of his students as a class, because my son's in his class. And Mr. Lineweaver provided an opportunity after some reteaching, and it was a mass retesting for everybody, or opportunity for everybody. And I just thought it was, I've used that on many occasions as an example of how to do it right when you see that there was some learning gap that took place amongst too many of his students, and he took that opportunity. So, but Ms. Clark, you are 100% correct that we have to, we continually have to make sure that our students are aware of the opportunities that are out there. It can't just be a one and done. And when we do notice deficiencies of where we think they should be, that's a great opportunity for potentially a mass opportunity for retesting or relearning or reteaching. So great observations. Still, I'm going all the way to the bottom. A couple statements were made there, but a question at the bottom. Still very confused about retakes. Teachers can require remediation, but not before or after school. They can make that as an opportunity to meet with the student, depending on what the learning gap is. And it may be something that they can do during a student's study hall, or they'll say, the student can say, I can't stay here, I don't have a study hall. Can I show up after school on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, whatever they collaborate with? Or some people who can't stay after school because they have jobs, they have responsibilities. They can say, hey, I can't make it during a study hall. Hey, I can't make it after school, but I want to come in and meet with you before school. Are you available on this date or these dates? So then they coordinate it. I mean, again, you want to talk about autonomy. That is part of that autonomy that we want to make sure people recognize that they have, and don't want to simply say on Wednesdays and Thursdays after school from 3:35 to 4:25. And that partially was clarification for parents, partially clarification for students and our teachers. It's wide open. You can do it, and don't feel that you are locked in to one particular time. When are they supposed to give the actual retakes? Great question. Again, there's that flexibility with, we have teachers who stay after school on Wednesday, Thursdays. We have teachers who come in before school. It's coordinating with the teacher what works for them. We're reducing on our end, unbeknownst to you, in the AMs on Tuesdays, we have our teachers come in early for some professional development. And we administratively have said we're going to reduce our requirements for teachers so that their AMs on Tuesdays are freed up so that they can better support students as well. And that's something that we have internal control over. We still have our after-school support systems. The area that I would love to add, but we currently cannot do it, and it may change. If it does, we'll be sure to let you know. We would love to be able to offer a testing center that is supported by an adult during the school day, so that if your child is available period 3, but they don't have that class, then we could have the test waiting on them to take it. But we're working on that because it's a staffing issue. I do have the supports to add staff, but I also have a location issue. I need to find a place that we can utilize this. And with construction on the horizon, makes it a little bit difficult. Not impossible, but difficult. But that is something that the teachers brought up themselves through discussion, and it's something we're looking at. Is, can we possibly do it? So, and Lynn's the only one I had talk. I apologize. I started going to questions. We'll play hot potato for the other 3 administrators. Lynn, anybody, if you have a question specific for science right now, go ahead and ask, because I'm going to let Ms. Shop go in. She's actually doing the book for the game that started 3 minutes ago. Anyone have a question specific for Ms. Shop? Adequate wait time. All right, Ms. Shop, thank you for your time. Cheer on our team, make sure the book is accurate, and make sure we win. Just saying. Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Vermillion or Mr. Lineweaver or Mr. Burkholz, anything you want to share about how you guys came to where you landed?
I can go. Chris Vermillion, Social Studies. This is my 23rd year at North Central High School and my 10th year as department chair. For social studies, we had a combination of conversations in our PLCs with PLC leaders, department time, and we decided to go to 60-40, largely because a lot of what we do in social studies is built on different steps as part of process, whether that be essay writing or whether that be project deadlines and that kind of thing. And we wanted to put a little bit more focus on making sure the students were doing those practice or formative activities that always inform the mastery activities as a part of it. And so that's kind of where we came up with things. The comparison I've given before is you could presumably do poorly on the Reconstruction test in U.S. history And that wouldn't necessarily keep you from going forward, learning the content and doing, well on the World War I test, where science and math may talk a little bit more about the skills you have to learn in order to be able to move on to the next piece. Certainly there are skills that we focus on and we work on in social studies as well, but we felt like 40% put a little bit more work into the practice and brought down the mastery quotient to 60%. So that's where we are with things.
Yeah, and I would, Mr. Brannigan, can you hear me? You
Yes,
good?
sir.
All right, cool. Sorry about my technology issue. It's just like COVID all over again. So I would say, just as the other humanities guy on the call, I would say, echoing what Mr. Vermillion said, English was kind of is in a similar boat. We really struggled. So we also met multiple times in PLCs, and I have a leadership team that was sort of running those conversations. So all the teachers had opportunity and to sort of talk about it. Then we sat on it for a week. We reflected on it. We came back at it after another week. And so we settled on a 65-35. And I would say for us, some of the difficulty comes in with the idea of sort of defining mastery, because for English, even the way the standards are written at the state level, they're banded. So 9, 10 have the same standards and 11, 12 have the same standards. And if you try to vertically work those, it becomes kind of muddy at times, because you're not really like setting up clear moments where you're like learning a discrete new skill by the time you get into high school. A lot of it is taking one thing and just building on it. And so it becomes really hard to sort of mark a moment when you're like, okay, well, you've mastered this, and now you don't do it anymore. That's not at all what we do. We continue to do the same kinds of things, but with greater degree of maybe scope or depth. And so anyway, for us, it's so much more about the practice that goes into it. So that's why we made a very intentional decision to move those numbers to the 65-35, which was going to decrease the amount of pressure on the mastery piece. And we also needed kids to do that work ahead of time, to do the steps along the way, so that when we got to a mastery product, they would be able to submit something that if they needed to be remediated, we didn't have to completely like go back through all the steps of the process all over again. So that's why we're trying to push it in that direction. So that's where we settled. And it's not perfect by any means, but I think it gives our teachers and our students a bit of a fair view of what they need to be doing for English.
The math teachers did basically the same thing in terms of the PLCs getting together, teachers having conversations. We actually, of course, being math people, we created a survey, and then we looked at the data in terms of where teachers felt like the balance should be between the summative and formative categories, or the mastery and the practice categories. And so we landed at 75-25. I do want to point out that the math department several years ago went to an 80-20 split, and it has been that way for a while now. And somebody asked about historical data prior to COVID. Do we have any? Well, I can tell you from a math standpoint, and I only have the data for A's and F's, but since we implemented the 80-20 about 6 years ago, actually it was 7 years ago, our A's have increased 5% since that time, and our F's have decreased 4% since that time. We've seen a lot of movement in the last 2 years where the data points crossed and went different directions. And so from a historical standpoint, I can tell you in math, it's benefited us over the long haul. Someone in the questions asked about how the grade's configured. Since I'm the math guy, I figure I should give a stab at it. If you could think of your grade as 100 points, the entire semester grade, I'll refer to it as the S1 grade or the S2 grade. If you consider that grade 100 points, you get 80 points for the entire semester if the final is 20% of the overall grade. That's where that 80-20 and a different context comes out at. 80% of the overall grade is based on all the semester work that's done, and then 20% is based off the final exam. So you take whatever percent they get on the final exam times 20, you take whatever percent they had in the class for the entire semester leading into the final, times that times 80, add those 2 points together, and that gives you your overall grade.
Spoken like a math guy. Much appreciated, sir. Much appreciated. So one of the last questions in the chat, and Jason, I'm going to let you take on that CP calculus question coming up here in a minute. But how are teachers supposed to individually coordinate with 100 students? They're not individually coordinating with 100 students. If the teachers probably have from 150 to 180 total students in their classes, depending upon what the class is, obviously, and factor in the students who will actually step up and say, hey, I want to take the retest or retake opportunity, compared to the students who pass above 90% on the first go around, compared to the students who again, we are pulling teeth to get them to show up, or reaching out to their parents. So no, it does take work to coordinate with these students, to encourage these students and to motivate some to participate in that and not take the easy way out. We had our first faculty meeting on Monday, and one of my talking points was not allowing students to basically give up on themselves, not cheat themselves out of opportunities because it's the easy way out. That is our job. That is our charge. And that is the expectation for all of us, is do not let them take the easy way out. Yes, you may not be able to go directly home, or you may have to come in earlier. Yes, we're going to take up part of your study hall time. And yes, that's normal. That's been going on as long as there's been teachers and students. That's nothing new. We have to work with those to assist those students in becoming better, being better, and realizing that they are better. And part of that same question, the student who would benefit from retaking tests won't if they can't get there. And you were 100% correct. And this is an anonymous narrative there. That's why we have ensured and made sure that we have late buses that to get our students home. I'm still in the office, and our last late bus left a little bit ago at 6 o'clock. Our first late buses were supposed to depart the building at 5, but it's probably 5:15. We had students who stayed after today to work with teachers already, just a continuation. So the late buses, let's not take it for granted, because not all school districts are able to support it or won't support those opportunities. But we want, and that's one of the reasons why we have the after school learning center as well, for that tutoring opportunity for the people who don't have mommy or dad who can bring them in early in the morning. That's why we offer the during school learning center, because the learning center is open during school hours, after school hours. So we're trying to reduce the number of barriers. This is a long-standing tradition of North Central. This is nothing that I or my team recently came up with. And we're providing more opportunities. That's our goal, to reduce some of those barriers to learning that exist based upon socioeconomic opportunities. So Mr. Burkholz, can you see that question? Will there be CP calculus moving forward, since ACP does not permit retakes?
That is a great question. I will look into that. That's my best answer right now. Hadn't considered it. There's another question to confirm the semester, the math final will account for 25% of the math grade. No, the math final will be 20% of the overall grade. Those 80 points for the entire semester will be divided up 75-25 for summative, mastery category, and the practice category. That will be 75-25. The final will be 20%.
I'm reading anonymous, and again, I apologize if anonymous is multiple people. I don't want to think it's one person. Why are more support hours not provided? Let's just start there. Let's go back, I want to say a year ago, and it was actually through the science department that came up with this solution. The support hours are actually after school hours that we're talking about. And we're holding teachers either after school or before school. There are times when we give teachers the opportunity to self-allocate when they do it, but a couple of years ago we didn't. And we told the entire building, just use as an example, we want you here on Thursdays for kids or Mondays for kids. And what we found, there was so much competition, especially amongst the people who are on this Zoom right now with the departments, because do I go to math or do I go to English? Do I go to social studies or do I go to science? So we decided to split it up amongst the building. So we divided it in Group A, Group B. One group meets or provides supports on Wednesdays after school, while Group A is supporting students. Group B is in their professional learning community. Why the professional learning communities? Because we don't want it to be anecdotal. Teachers are looking at data. They're looking at student performance. They're looking at their assessments. And they're trying to better provide for our kids by saying this worked, this didn't work. Looking at how the students performed, hey, we need to do some reteaching on this as part of that scaffolding, moving to the next level. So teachers are taking a look at the work that they're doing at a level that we've never done before. And this has been a work in progress, and we're getting better at it yearly. But that's when we say teachers are coming in, it's not during traditional hours. We're keeping them after hours, or we're having them come in early to support kids on multiple levels. So when you talk about adding additional support time, that turns into a contractual situation where now we're telling people we want you to stay after school 3 days a week, 4 days a week. Now, we're talking about, or at least I'm talking about, what it is that is a contractual issue. There are the majority of our folks here, and this is well before we ever put it in contracts, we're staying after school anyway to work with kids. Or they were coming in early. They were coordinating, collaborating upon special requests, whatever it was, they were doing it anyway. And so for consistency's sake, and trying to take control of that, that's when we as administrators said, okay, we need to put some parameters on this, some time on it. And so understand that when we talk about support time that we are mandating, that's actually after school hours or before school hours. When the school's over at 3:30, if ever you're on this side of town, take a look, or better yet, even in the morning, take a look at what time this parking lot stops filling up with faculty. Or the student parking lot starts filling up with kids, because people are coming in and they're actually doing work when the opportunity presents itself. And not every teacher can, because I've got coaches right now on the south side of town coaching our basketball team. Back in Performing Arts, the Counterpoints had rehearsal this evening. So I've got teachers engaged in multiple activities supporting our kids beyond academia. So that is real. That is real. Take a quick look here. All right, folks, I'm gonna give you opportunity. I want to respect the fact that my 3 DCs, this is the first day of school for us, folks. This was, we just came off a break just like our kids, and let's put it this way, got to get back in shape for all this. Teaching all day, walking the hallways, interacting with folks. So it takes a little time. We'll get better. Thank you, Miss Martha. Much appreciated. All right, folks, I'm going to wrap it up. I want to thank my DCs for giving me part of the evening. I told them about this pre-break. No one complained, but I saw it in their eyes. Oh, come on, B, it's our first day back. And I do appreciate the gentleman and the lady who are on here. And none of this would work without their continued communication with their students, their teachers, and with you as well. Whoever, and I apologize, Ms. Kelly, with the CP calculus, thank you for planting a seed that we can take a look at and start moving with and see what we can do better with CP calculus moving forward. We do have some new courses coming out next year as well. Let's not forget that. We got the school board support, and we are adding some new classes next year as well in a variety of departments. So with that said, for those of you who took time in your night to be here, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I promise you we'll be better tomorrow. Folks, have a good evening, and we'll see you on the flip side.